All right, y'all. So today we are going over writing conditional statements and biconditional statements. So let's go ahead and talk about what those are first. So a conditional statement is essentially any statement in if-then form. Okay, so any statement really that has those two words, if and then, is a conditional statement. All right. So any statement in if-then form. I'm going to go ahead and start with an example of how we can convert from a normal statement to a statement that is in conditional form. Okay, so maybe we started off with this. Okay, so we could say like rewrite the statement into conditional statement form. Okay, into a conditional statement. Okay, so here's our original. All right, so let's say we said humans have 10 eyes. Okay, not a true statement, but that's okay. All right, so let's rewrite it into a conditional statement. All right, so again, we need an if and a then for it to be a conditional statement. Okay, so we want to think about how we can kind of rewrite it, and maybe there's probably a couple different ways. You can kind of be a little bit, I'm a little bit flexible with how you write it, but as long as it has an if and a then, it will make sense. So probably the easiest way to do this is to maybe say if you are a human, then you have 10 eyes. Okay, so that's probably the easiest way to write it into if-then form into a conditional statement. All right, so we now have our conditional statement. Okay, so if you are a human, then you have 10 eyes. Now, just quickly to talk about whether this statement is true or not, and how we can, just any conditional statement, how we can tell if it's true. All right, so essentially what you want to do, and I kind of mentioned this in another video, is that you want to kind of go into the world where you want to set it up to where you are a human. Okay, so you're thinking about this section right here, okay, the part that says, you are a human. Okay, and then you've got this second part here that says you have 10 eyes. So you want to kind of go into the world that if you're a human, so you're setting it up as if you are true here. Okay, even if that's not a true statement. Okay, so there are some animals that aren't humans, but we want to think about the things that are human. Okay, so if you are a human, okay, so I'm thinking about all humans, then you have 10 eyes. All right, and that is not true. Okay, that is not a true statement because in the world where this is true, this isn't. Okay, now let's talk about these two parts here. The part, notice this is the if, right? And then you've got this. You've got the you are a human part, and then you've got the you have 10 eyes part. Okay, and let's talk about what each section of a conditional statement is. Right? Again, you have the if and you have the then. Okay, the part that comes after the if is called our hypothesis. Okay, the part that is after the then is called our conclusion. Okay, now you have those two different parts, okay, for any given conditional statement. Now, typically, when we have a few symbols here. We don't use the symbols too often, but they are there, and I want to go over them. Okay, is with the hypothesis and the conclusion, we have symbols for them. Okay, and what they are is this is the P part. Okay, hypothesis is P, and then the conclusion is Q. Okay, now why it's P and Q, I really have no idea. Okay, and then you might see this as well. All right, you might see an arrow in between. Okay, so when you see P, arrow, Q, that means like if P, then Q. Okay, so that arrow means then. Okay, cool. All right, so the way we're going to do this is we're going to learn some more vocab from here, but that's kind of the general setup for a conditional statement. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this activity right here. Okay, so the original statement, all right? So the original. Notice I have my if P then Q, right? So that's if P then Q. And I already have it set up where the original is if you are a human, then you have 10 eyes. So it's kind of our same statement that we worked with in our example. Okay, now we need to learn 3 more vocab words. Okay, this is converse, inverse, and contrapositive. Now, the first thing I want to say is this. Remember, this original statement wasn't true. Okay, that wasn't a true statement. And with the converse, inverse, contrapositive, it doesn't matter whether or not it's true. All these are doing is rewriting my original statement. Okay, so we're literally rearranging the statement with these kind of working parts. Okay, so let's look at the converse first. Okay, the original is if you are a human, then you have 10 eyes. Now the converse, okay, notice where we have switched. It was if P then Q, now it's if Q then P. Okay, so I'm switching my order here, right? This is essentially you flip the hypothesis and the conclusion. Okay, so now I'm going to put if you have 10 eyes, then you are a human. Okay, so that's how you can see the colors, right? That's how we would write the statement. If you had this original statement and I asked you to find the converse or to write the converse, then you would write this statement right here. If you have 10 eyes, then you are human. Okay, so that's one way to kind of help you out to write the statement. All right, now this down here, the inverse. Okay, now notice on the inverse and the contrapositive, you have these little squiggly lines. Now what the squiggly means is it means not. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and write that just so we have it somewhere. Okay, so the squiggly means not. Okay, just so we're aware. And you kind of, with the English, right, you have to kind of play with the particular sentence, right? You can't just put not in the beginning. Okay, you have to make sure you're consistent with the English part of that. Okay, so let's look at the original, right? So we're going back to we're always going to refer back to the original. Okay, so for this one, okay, is if you are human. Okay, notice we've got P first. Okay, we still have the P first and then the Q first. So I'm still going to have red, blue from those statements, right? It's still P here, Q here, Q here. So it does line up with what we have there. Okay, but we've got to do the not part. Okay, so if you are not a human, okay, I'll go ahead and write not a human. Now let's change the color for not just so we can see it. Okay, if you are not a human, and let's expand it out. Let's move everything over a bit. Okay, if you are not a human, okay, then notice another not, then you do not have, okay, do not have 10 eyes. All right, so there we have it. There's our sentence. Now, whether or not it's true, doesn't matter, okay? It does not matter if that's a true or false statement. It's still the inverse, okay, because I'm still just rewriting that original statement, okay? So, and let's just think about whether that's true or not. Let's see, if you are not a human, then you do not have 10 eyes. That is true at sometimes, right? If you are not a human, right, if you're a cat, okay, then that's true that you do not have 10 eyes, but that's not always true. Okay, so this one would technically be a false statement. All right, remember, it has to be, for something to be true, it has to be true all the time in order for it to be a true statement. Okay, so that's the inverse, all right? If you are not a human, then you do not have 10 eyes, okay? And then over here, okay, with the contrapositive, okay, again, we are going up to here, okay, where we are, notice it's Q over here now, so if P then Q, if you are human, right, the P is over here, so red needs to be here, and then blue needs to be here, and I'm actually going to copy this right here, because notice, this is my not P part, okay, not P, well, not P also goes here, okay, see, notice I have not P, and then not P, all right, and then I'm also going to copy this one, okay, and then scoot it over a little bit. Okay, So that would give me my statements. Okay, so we didn't end up using these. Okay, so there you have it. That's the converse, inverse, and contrapositive. Okay, so hopefully with the colors it helps you a little bit, and then you understand that the symbol here means not. But remember, for each of these, we're always referring back to that original statement. Okay, so maybe it helps, right? Like if we just deleted these, right? The original, okay, is this. Contrapositive is this. Okay, it helps to look at maybe one at a time. If that's the case, then go for it, right? So you're always referring back to the original. Okay, so let's talk about biconditional. All right, so biconditional. Okay. Okay, this is any statement okay, with if and only if. All right, now if and only if, okay, to kind of go with the if P then Q sort of notation, all right, this would be as if you were to have an arrow not only this way, but also this way. Okay, so you're saying that both parts mean each other, essentially. Okay, so let's talk about an example. Okay, so an example would be something like this. There is school, okay, if and only if it is a Saturday. Okay, only if it is a Saturday. Now, true statement, definitely not. Okay, we don't have school on Saturdays. All right, actually, I'm going to pause it real quick. I want to look at something. Okay, sorry, I wanted to actually line it up with your assignment here. So I'm going to go ahead and say there is not school. Okay, sorry about that. So there is not school if and only if it is a Saturday. Okay, and we're going to think about whether or not that's true. Okay, now for a biconditional statement, notice it's a statement that goes both ways. So if I really wanted to rewrite this, I could say if there is not school, then it is a Saturday. Okay, which is not necessarily true. Just wanted to throw that out there, right? If there is not school, then it is Saturday, right? It could also be Sunday. All right, so that's not always true that it would be a Saturday. All right, but with a biconditional statement, it's a statement that goes both ways. Okay, so it goes if there is not school, then it is a Saturday. But it's also saying if it is a Saturday, then there is not school. Okay, so it has to be true both ways. It's as if you were to rewrite it as if you're looking at kind of like the original and the converse, and you're determining whether or not that's true. Okay, so it essentially means if this is true, or you're asking yourself, if this, then this, but it's also if this, then this. Okay, so in order for it to be true, it has to be true both sides of that. Okay, so like I said, this is a false statement. All right, because it could be a Sunday, right? It could be a Sunday that you don't have school. Okay. All right, but really with the biconditionals, it's just another type of statement. Okay, we don't change biconditionals. We don't really have like inverse, converse, contrapositive for them. It's just a different type of statement that means one implies the other, and then the other implies the first one. Okay, is essentially what a biconditional is. All right, and that is it. Okay, that is it for this topic. So this is kind of a shorter one. So a few things just to recap, right? You got to think about if these statements are true or not. A conditional statement is a statement in if-then form. Okay, you could rewrite this. You can rewrite any sentence into a conditional statement form. Here's an example of that. The first part, the part after the if, is the hypothesis. The second part is the conclusion. Okay, biconditional statements, the statements with if and only if, and then don't forget you can change these statements, right? So you have if this is the original, okay, then the converse, inverse, and contrapositive are as follows. Okay, and then that symbol means not. Okay, so depending on the English, you have to kind of work your not into the sentence. All right, but that is it for this topic. You have a great day.